We'll vote on Thomas Ferguson for U.S. Attorney. We'll hold over the remaining nominees listed on our agenda for later consideration. Additionally, we'll be voting on S 1884, the Holocaust Expropriation Art Recovery Act of 2025. That goes by the acronym of HERE. Before turning to the agenda, give an update on Arctic frost investigation. Last week, Senator Johnson and I made public 197 Jack Smith subpoenas consisting of almost 2,000 pages of records. These records show that the Biden DOJ and FBI expanded Arctic frost to target over 430 Republican groups and individuals. This included Republican members of Congress and some of our colleagues on this very committee. To date, we've learned Jack Smith subpoenaed the phone records of at least 13 members of Congress, including 11 senators. I expect there may be more come public. Judge Boasberg issued non-disclosure orders that hid these subpoenas and are subject to my investigation. I'll have more to share that on a later date. Starting in January, Senator Johnson and I have made public thousands of pages of records. Most of the records are from whistleblowers. And obviously, when you get records that way, they aren't overly redacted, like most of the stuff you get through the official channels. What we've shown is that Arctic frost was a runaway train. I've heard some say that we haven't done anything regarding Arctic frost. That's pretty unbelievable, since no one would even know what went on without Johnson and the Grassley oversight. And our oversight has led to accountability. The FBI unit started Arctic frost has been now dismantled. Many agents who were part of the investigation have been fired, and deservedly so. Accountability measures are still ongoing. Our oversight continues, and I have more to share with my colleagues as I obtain more records. But it's important that the Department of Justice produce records at a rate and volume of my whistleblowers. Obviously, we don't want redactions. And I want to share that I expect that oversight work not only to apply to Arctic frost, but questions that both Republicans and Democrats have submitted to DOJ and other areas. Turning to our agenda, we're voting on Thomas Ferguson, U.S. Attorney, Western District, North Carolina. He's a highly qualified nominee who has earned numerous awards during his career. He worked as a special assistant U.S. attorney in D.C., where he prosecuted an array of drug crimes. He's also spent more than a dozen years in private practice, litigating white-collar defense and civil disputes. I'm confident that Mr. Ferguson will do a good job as a new U.S. attorney. Turning to the HERE Act of 2025, I want to thank Senator Cornyn and Blumenthal, working in a bipartisan way, for introducing this bill, which is co-sponsored by a number of members of this committee, including this senator. This legislation builds upon our work on the original HERE Act of the 114th Congress. In June of 2016, the Judiciary Committee held a hearing on the importance of reuniting Holocaust victims with their lost art, which amounts to stolen heritage. At the end of 2016, the HERE Act cleared this committee and the Senate for voice votes. As I said at that hearing in 2016, quote, "The bottom line is this: we need to fulfill our commitment to make sure that this artwork is returned to its rightful owners," end of my quote. The HERE Act of 2025 will do just that. It'll help ensure Holocaust victims and their families can have their day in court. The bill will reiterate Congress's intent that these folks should have their cases adjudicated based upon merits and facts of their case. I look forward to seeing strong bipartisan support for this bill this morning. And now to Ranking Member Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley. President Trump has turned federal law enforcement into a shield for his friends' and allies' misconduct and a sword to attack his political opponents. Example, President Trump recently pardoned the founder of the world's largest crypto exchange, Binance, Changpeng Zhao, who pled guilty to money laundering in 2023. But of course, in the big money world, there's always more to the story. It just so happens that Binance hosts the Trump family's crypto platform, known as World Liberty Financial, through which Trump and his family have made more than $5 billion. More than $5 billion. While Mr. Zhou was seeking a pardon, Binance accepted a $2 billion investment in a World Liberty token, essentially a $2 billion deposit for the Trump family's cryptocurrency schemes. Even the conservative National Review said that the pardon was, quote, "stunning in its shamelessness, recklessness, and moral inversion." But when he was asked about the pardon this week, in an interview with 60 Minutes, the president couldn't remember. He said, "I know nothing about it. I can only tell you this. My sons are into it. I'm glad they are, because it's probably a great industry, crypto." This kind of blatant corruption and self-dealing used to provoke outrage by colleagues on both sides of the aisle. But so far, all we get are crypto crickets. I'm sure my Republican colleagues who are so outraged that President Biden might have used an auto pen, like many presidents before him, will be just as upset that President Trump doesn't know anything about pardoning this crypto criminal. But there's no better example of President Trump's weaponization of justice than his effort to rewrite the history of January 6. On his first day in office, the president issued a full and unconditional pardon to nearly 1,600 January 6 rioters, including more than 600 charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement. Standing in the back of the room are people who are keeping us safe. They are people who were assaulted on January 6 by rioters who have now been unconditionally pardoned by President Trump. Next to his political appointees, the Justice Department led an unprecedented purge of career prosecutors and FBI agents simply because they worked on the investigation of January 6. That's all it took. Then Attorney General Bondi hired a January 6 rioter, Jared Weiss, as a senior official at Department of Justice, even though Mr. Weiss was filmed urging his fellow rioters to kill police officers defending the Capitol on January 6th. This is what Ed Martin, the failed U.S. Attorney nominee, who is now a senior Department of Justice official, meant when he said, quote, "No MAGA left behind." Now President Trump is seeking $230 million of taxpayers' money from the Justice Department, claiming he was wrongly prosecuted, despite evidence of his efforts to interfere in the 2020 election. So while American people grapple with inflation and rising health insurance costs, the president wants $230 million in taxpayers' dollars. At the same time, the full might of federal law enforcement is being directed at states and cities that just didn't happen to vote for President Trump. One of them is my home state. So let me tell you what's going on with Operation Midway Blitz in the city of Chicago, in case you missed it. Yesterday was a banner day for the ICE agents. They had a daring raid in hot pursuit of President Trump's worst of the worst criminals. Remember, those are the targets, the worst of the worst? They made a daring raid on a preschool without permission or a warrant to arrest one of the teachers. The children in that school, all under the age of 6, were, according to one parent of a 3-year-old, crying, terrified, and huddled together as the ICE agents tried to apprehend this one teacher. To do it in a place where children are with complete disregard for what they see, one parent said, "There's no low these people won't stoop to." And what do we know about the terrorist target? Well, the ICE Dream Team successfully apprehended one, in their estimation. School officials, it turns out, report the woman who cares for infants at the school had work authorization and just undergone a background check. Meanwhile, the federal courts continue to monitor and limit the outrageous activities of the Chicago ICE Dream Team. Federal agents are trampling on the constitutional rights of my constituents, racially profiling and arresting U.S. citizens simply because they're Hispanic or speak Spanish, zip-tying and traumatizing innocent children, and tear-gassing journalists, pastors, and police officers. Instead of addressing these violations of law, White House advisor Stephen Miller and Deputy Attorney General Blanche are threatening to prosecute my state's governor with baseless claims that he could be arrested for, quote, seditious conspiracy. So what are we going to do about this? The Senate Judiciary Committee has an obligation to conduct oversight. And let me say a word about Jack Smith. I'm interested in why senators turned up on the document that you released. I don't know the circumstances, but we've debated it here in the committee 3 or 4 times, asking basic questions. Why were these senators on this list? There is one way to get to the bottom of this, and it's very simple. Subpoena Jack Smith. Put him under oath and put him a chair in front of us to answer those questions. Just that simple. And he's offered to come. And yet, he's not being called. Perhaps there's an explanation for it. But I think we should call an official timeout on senators commenting on this matter, so long as we won't bring Mr. Smith here under oath to answer our questions. He's willing to do it. There's no excuse he should be. And I might add, too, it's time for DHS Secretary Noem to take time from her glossy promo campaign in Chicago to come and testify under oath before this committee as well. I've been on this committee for more than 20 years. I have never seen the level of obstruction that we're witnessing with this administration. Never, not even close. We must call Secretary Noem under oath, bring Jack Smith here under oath, let him answer our questions. That isn't very complicated. In fact, it usually is the custom of the committee to be our assignment under the Constitution. Mr. President, I yield.
Okay. We'll now turn to the nomination of Thomas Ferguson to serve as U.S. Western District, North Carolina. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grant.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Coos.
Aye.
Mr. Hawley.
Aye.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy. Mrs. Blackburn. Aye. Mr. Schmidt.
Aye.
Mrs. Britt. Aye. Mrs. Moody. Aye. Mr. Durbin.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Klobuchar.
No by proxy.
Mr. Coons.
No.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No.
Ms. Rono.
No by proxy.
Mr. Booker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Padilla. No. Mr. Welch. Mr. Schitt.
No by proxy.
Chairman Grassley.
Aye.
On this vote, the ayes are 13, the nays are 9.
The nomination will be favorably reported. Now I'll call on the authors of the HERE Act to speak. Senator Cornyn.
If I could just make a
Oh.
quick comment. Yeah, thank you. I want to assure Senator Durbin, I want Jack Smith to testify before the committee in the country about Arctic frost. Promise you, I do. But before that, I'd like to kind of like do my homework here, find out what happened before he takes the witness stand. I'd like to know, was there any connection between the DOJ Arctic Forest investigators and Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis? Why did the third guy at the DOJ quit to go work for Alvin Bragg? I can't remember the gentleman's name, Fannie Willis, what did he do at the White House all day? So it's going to take a while to figure out exactly what Arctic frost was about. Did it interact with prosecutions in Atlanta at the state level? Did it interact with the Manhattan City prosecution? We'll get there, but when he comes, I want to know exactly what went on so I can ask him questions in the best way to get to the truth. But please do not worry or lose any sleep about this man appearing before this committee. He will.
Senator Cornyn.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to see the green shoots of bipartisanship sprouting this morning on the HERE Act. I want to thank you and Senators Blumenthal, Cruz, Booker, Tillis, Blackburn, Schmidt, Britt, Welch, and Schiff for your co-sponsorship of the HERE Act of 2025. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, the original Holocaust Expropriated Art Recovery Act was signed into law in 2016. It ensured that Holocaust survivors and their heirs' claims to Nazi-looted art would not unfairly be barred by the statute of limitations, but instead, again, as you noted, that those claims would be resolved on the merits. The bill established a 6-year statute of limitations from the time of discovery for claims related to Nazi-looted art. But that bill expires at the end of next year, which is why this legislation is necessary. The HERE Act of 2025 permanently extends the HERE Act by eliminating that sunset provision. It also clarifies and strengthens procedural protections for Holocaust survivors and their heirs by ensuring Nazi-looted art claims will be considered on the merits. With the rising tide of anti-Semitism around the world, this bill sends a message that Holocaust survivors and their heirs will not be forgotten and that justice does not have a time limit. I'm proud to stand with my colleagues to ensure the restitution of Nazi-looted artwork to their rightful owners. I want to thank Art Ashes and the World Jewish Restitution Organization and many other organizations for their support of the HERE Act of 2025, and I look forward to its passage out of committee today.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
assume Senator Blumenthal would
Thank
like to
you.
speak
Thank you,
now.
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your support and the ranking member's endorsement of this bill, and I want to express my appreciation to Senator Cornyn. You know, we all know that artwork has a value beyond its dollars and cents estimates. It has an emotional value that is often priceless, and the return of these artworks to the relatives of victims, most of the victims themselves are no longer alive, is enormously important to a community beyond just the individuals affected. It's not a hypothetical or a relic of the distant past. We know that about 100,000 works of art now are in museums around just the United States, according to a 2006 survey of American museums. And the reason that the HERE Act is so important is not only that the original measure of 2016 expires, it sunsets in 2027, but it also has enabled procedural obstacles to be raised, unrelated to the merits. And those procedural obstacles have been used, in effect, to run out the clock to 2027. We need to make very clear that claims on the merits of these priceless works of art will be dealt with by the courts in a timely way before the act runs out. Make sure that the rights of the original owners are upheld and that the kinds of protections, for example, statute of limitations, is retained as well. So I appreciate the bipartisan support we have for this measure. I think everybody on this committee understands the merits and the values involved here, and I thank my colleagues in advance for their support.
Next up will be Senator Cruz and Coons. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This committee today is considering incredibly important bipartisan legislation. I thank Senator Cornyn for his leadership here, Senator Blumenthal. The Holocaust was one of the most horrific acts of mass murder and cultural erasure in human history. 6 million Jewish lives extinguished. Entire families wiped from the record, and their property scattered, sold, and far too often displayed without shame. Go to Auschwitz. Walk the grounds. Read the diary of Anne Frank. Hear the testimony of survivors. The brutality was not random. It was deliberate. It was not the chaos of war. It was the cold, bureaucratic precision of evil. Those who survived did so by hiding under floorboards, in cellars, in ship berths, clinging to life as the world around them burned. When they emerged, they found their homes destroyed, their families murdered, and their heirlooms, the art, the books, the Torahs, the small treasures that carried their identity, stolen by those who sought to erase not just a culture, but a people. The Nazis stole hundreds of thousands of artworks in what has been termed the greatest displacement of art in human history. The Nazis looted over 600,000 works of art. To this day, more than 100,000 of those works of art are not yet recovered. Let me repeat that. More than 100,000 works of art are still missing today. These weren't just paintings. They included manuscripts, diaries, family letters, personal papers that carried a people's history, identity, and faith. Each stolen piece is not just an object. It is a story, a name, a fragment of a soul torn from history and waiting to be returned. I strongly supported and helped write the HERE Act in 2016, and I continue to strongly support the 2025 extension of the HERE Act. The HERE Act was written to make sure that justice for Holocaust victims is not lost to paperwork, procedure, or the passage of time. It ensures that their families can seek restitution on the merits, not be turned away on a technicality. Since the passage of the original HERE Act, some courts, unfortunately, have chipped away at that promise, twisting the law to protect institutions instead of victims, to prize possession over justice. Let me say right now, if you are a museum, if you are a corporation, if you are a railroad, if you are a family or an individual and you are displaying the art that was pilfered by Nazis, you ought to be ashamed, and you have no right to keep that stolen art. You are glorying in evil. This legislation that we are soon, I expect, to vote and pass unanimously, restores what Congress intended, that the law should never be a shield for theft, especially theft born of genocide. The law was never meant to be a refuge for those who profit from theft, let alone the systemic extermination of an object's original owners. Supporting and strengthening the HERE Act is not just about restitution. It's about remembrance. It's about telling the truth and refusing to let history or its victims be brushed aside. Because justice delayed is not justice denied unless we let it be. We hear their cries from the trains, from the camps, from the ashes of history. Through the HERE Act, we hear the pleas of the victims of the Holocaust, and we are acting as a Congress and as a nation to deliver justice in the shadow of one of humanity's greatest atrocities. Thank you.
Senator Coons.
And thank you, Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin. I just wanted to thank my colleagues, Senators Cornyn and Senator Blumenthal, who are leading this bill in this Congress, Senator Cruz and others who drafted and led the initial HERE Act. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. It is important that we continue to act in ways that hold accountable those who benefited from the actions of the Nazis, those who still hold or hide the art that they looted, and those who have refused to come forward and to give it to those families who are the rightful owners. This is a good and positive moment for this committee today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to speak?
Just add my name, please, as co-sponsor, as consent.
We'll add Senator Durbin
Same here, please.
and Senator Graham. We could probably avoid a roll call vote, but I think this is an important piece of legislation. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Aye. Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Hawley.
Aye.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mrs. Blackburn. Aye. Mr. Schmidt. Aye. Mrs. Britt. Aye. Mrs. Moody. Aye. Mr. Durbin.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Klobuchar.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Booker.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Welch.
Aye.
Mr. Schiff.
Aye by proxy.
Chairman Grassley.
Aye.
On his vote, the ayes are 22.
The bill will be reported. Unless anybody needs to speak, the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Joe.